Thank you.
Obrigado, Idelfonso. Eu acho que o 16 horas. Duas precisões aqui. As fichas de pergunta, é só levantar a mão e pedir que eles têm lá. Nada. Desculpa, vou passar as instruções agora. Eu acho que um dos pontos centrais que tocou o Luiz Idelfonso, que é algo que a gente já vinha observando, mesmo nós como financiadores, não tanto como investidores, e a gente vinha observando no setor, são duas tendências assim paralelas e obviamente não exclusivas. A primeira é a mudança da estrutura familiar sucroalcooleira para a mudança mais corporativa, profissionalmente manejada, mais sofisticada, etc. E segundo, essa estrutura que ele mencionou, que era fragmentada, tipicamente fragmentada, que agora passa, ou passará, deverá passar para um processo mais amplo ainda de consolidação no mercado. E eu concordo com ele que o papel do private equity é super importante aqui em dois aspectos. Digamos, que ele entra através de uma mergers and acquisitions, né? Ou seja, entra na parte corporativa, ou seja, um projeto, uma indústria que já existe, eles entram comprando e, obviamente, ampliando a base de capital para alguma expansão. E também o que nós vimos mais aqui, pelo menos na nossa parte de financiador, é eles entrando nos projetos que são greenfields, que são novos, onde já se observa a presença forte de grupos estrangeiros, que tipicamente são grupos de capital privado ou fundos de capital privado. Quero passar agora a palavra para o senhor Bernard Chaud, que falará sobre a sua visão desse assunto nosso. Faça favor, please.
Bonjour à tous. Thank you for inviting Tereos to this conference. I'm very happy to be here and to represent Mr. Duval. When Mr. Duval decided to invest in Brazil, it was in the previous century, at the end of the previous century, but it was the previous century. He was looking for growth and profitability in sugar and ethanol. At this time, oil companies believed that ethanol was not a serious business, but could cause them serious damage. Now the picture has changed. Oil companies seem to believe that ethanol is part of their future. In the meantime, Tereos was very happy with its Brazilian operations, Guarani, which grew up and ranks now among the top 5 Brazilian cane crusher. And we still are aiming at investing. Today my favorite number will be 3, because we work on 3 raw materials: sugarcane, sugar beet, and starch. We also are involved in 3 countries: Europe, Brazil, and Africa. And I'm going to deal with the 3 pillars of ethanol investment strategy. Is that working for the presentation? Yes. So, next slide. Okay, here are the 3 pillars. Ethanol is contributing to sustainability of agriculture worldwide. Second pillar, ethanol first and second generation contributes to cut in greenhouse gases emissions. And pillar number 3, ethanol contributes to partly substitute fossil fuels. We're going to the first pillar. First pillar, diversification of outlet is the main importance. As we see here, yields are increasing, and thus agriculture needs more diversified outlets. We see in the chart that all areas, except unfortunately Africa, have experimented very important growth in yield during the 40 last years. In this situation, the highest are the yield, the highest risk of oversupply in these countries, and the highest they are exposed to volatility. One way, very interesting way to reduce volatility is to increase diversification of the outlets, to diversify the outlets to non-food applications. How does it work? So we're going to see in the next chart that on the long run, as production increases, biomass products are cheaper and cheaper. Here you have the example of sugar. The blue curve is sugar and the red curve is oil. The chart begins in 1912, so it's almost 1 century ago. Prices are in dollar value 2007, so it's custom currency, taking into account the inflation. You see that the trend for oil is price are getting up, and the trend of sugar price are getting down. So prices of sugar are more and more cheaper compared to oil. If we make the ratio of the two prices, we can see on next chart still the example of sugar, that we can buy one can buy more and more hundreds of sugar pounds with just 1 barrel of crude oil. Till the first oil shock in the 70s, we could not even buy 100 pounds of sugar. Now, at present, we are approximately around 400 pounds of sugar for 1 barrel of oil. And we were at about 6 last year, and we were about 7 during the first oil shock. This shows that we need a stable frame. The agriculture needs a stable frame to ensure profitability. And at the reverse, the industry, the ethanol industry, may count on a more and more profitable or a more and more competitive raw material. This is true for sugar, this is true for sugarcane, and the same trend is also true for cereals. In that chart, you see wheat and sugar as an example. You see that the two trends are similar. So this is the first pillar, profitability on the long term and diversification of outlets. Second pillar, there is a need of cut into GHG emissions. And in that direction, first and second generation ethanol are good candidates to provide with cuts in emissions. This chart, I hope you will read. I'm not sure you will read it clearly at the end of the room, so I'm going to give you figures. This chart is extracted from the European directive about renewable energy, and it has assessed how many GHG emission savings was due to ethanol, and they found that this was averaging between about 50% and 87%. You have the first line is sugar beet, about 60%. Then you have wheat to ethanol, which is comprised between 50 and 70 when you take straw as a raw material for the plant. And you have sugarcane, which is assessed at about 71 when you take into account transportation to Europe. And if you take straw as a raw material completely, is this cellulosic ethanol, you can reach 87%. So when you have high quality ethanol, such as what we can produce here in Brazil, or such as in some plants we can produce in Europe, with high quality ethanols, we are sure you are providing the world with cuts in CO2 emissions. Then some people say, okay, you have this calculation, but what about what about indirect lands? What about indirect land change, use change? Everybody must know that, in fact, there is no need of deforestation, neither to feed the world, neither for biofuels. Here you see that there is only 1.5 billion hectares which are used at the moment. Meanwhile, there are 4 billion hectares which are available for agriculture. And I would like to quote here Dr. Schmidhuber from FAO, who came and speak here in Sao Paulo last October, and he said that there was no problem of land availability, but problem of land productivity. So there is no problems of land on an average in the world. Specifically in Brazil, there is no problems of availability of land because, as you can see, there is only 1% of the lands which is used for sugarcane to ethanol, so that's very little. If we look also at grains, we can see in that chart the curve, up curve, which is in brown. This is the curve of area harvested worldwide since 1960. And you can see that since 1960, the quantity of hectares harvested to produce grain worldwide has remained unchanged. During that time, the two other curves, the red one and the green one, are consumption and production. And you can see that they have been multiplied more or less by 2 times during that period, or even more than doubled. So you can see that increasing production doesn't need increasing the use of land. Probably in that period there have been land use change, probably due to growing cities and to growing airports. So this is for the second pillar, the pillar of high quality ethanol, which helps to reduce GHG emissions. Now we are going to look at the third pillar. It's ethanol contributing to partly substitute fossil fuels. You know that fossil fuels production capacity is reducing, and ethanol is ready available today as a substitute, part substitute. We probably will not substitute all oil products soon, but it's available possibility ready now. As you can see here, production is increasing. America countries are the leaders, but there is also an expectation of increase of demand in ethanol. Ethanol is available. You can find it in the distribution chain. You can find it at the retailers. You have first a possibility of using the same pumps to provide ethanol, and the challenge consists to increase the number of pumps where you have ethanol. In Brazil, it's very well often found. In the US or in Europe, it's much more difficult, but it's possible. For the consumer, it's also possible to provide them with cars which are compatible. Here you have the chart for Brazil showing that more and more consumers may have flexible fuel cars. In Europe and in the States, we also use cars, normal cars, standard cars, and with only a small percentage of ethanol inside. More and more outlets for ethanol here. And so